Hello, everybody, and welcome to the newest episode of the Moderately Athletic Podcast. I am your host, Sam Wontok, and as always, I am joined by my lovely co-hosts, Tyler Noctical and Ethan Decker. Fellas, how are we doing tonight?
Well, I'm doing good tonight. Had a nice little bowl of ice cream to start this podcast, or before we start the podcast, I should say. I got a pretty big sweet tooth. There's cookies and cream, so it just hit the spot after a long day. But ready to talk some ball.
Yeah, that sounds very good, Tyler. That sounds very good. But I'm definitely feeling some effects of cut down day. My Vikings, and specifically Kwesi Adolfo-Mensah, shocked me with a couple of his moves that he's made in cutting Armon Watson and Amir Smith-Marset the past 2 days. But you know what? Not going to rip him too much yet. First cut down day for him as a GM, so we'll see how the moves pan out.
Yeah. But you really hit the nail on the head, Decker, with our current plan for our episode. We're going to be doing mostly news coverage because as of this recording being Wednesday, August 31st at 10:12 p.m., there have been a lot of moves going on around the league in terms of players getting released and then players getting picked up by the waivers. We have about 21 bullet points that we're going to cover tonight for the news, and we're going to share our thoughts, and we'll keep it going here. But let's start off with possibly the biggest surprise that I think happened during this offseason. We all thought that this person would be traded, but they're sticking around for one more year, and that is Jimmy G's contract has been restructured with the Niners, keeping him as the backup for one more season. There is no trade clause and no, I think it's a release clause, so he's there and he's staying. Guys, what do we think about it?
I think it's a good move for the 49ers. Obviously, you want to get as much value out of your players as you can, and they really, really wanted to trade Jimmy G, but no one came up for a buyer, and it surprised me because I saw two Adam Schefter tweets, and one was there is practically no trade market for Jimmy Garoppolo, and then one posted 15 minutes later was there's a trade market for QB Mason Rudolph, and I'm like, what world are we living in that where teams would rather trade for Mason Rudolph than Jimmy Garoppolo? And then I remember the contracts that they both have. So, but ultimately, I think this is a really good move for both Jimmy G and the 49ers because, they are in a very win-now scenario. They need, and God forbid, Trey Lance goes down. But Jimmy G, he's been there. He's led them to a Super Bowl already. I shouldn't say led them. He's been on a Super Bowl caliber team, and he didn't really mess up until the last game, being the Super Bowl. So he's got the experience to do it, and I think there might be some deep down animosity between Jimmy G and Trey Lance, but I don't think Garoppolo is the kind of guy to hold it to Trey Lance because he knows it's probably more of a company thing. But I think he's got a good enough head on his shoulders where he knows he's just got to stay healthy this year and he can go play ball next year. And like I said, God forbid Trey Lance gets hurt, he's a good backup and he's getting paid to be a good backup. He's the highest paid backup in the league now. So, and this is speaking for me. If I'm the highest paid backup in the NFL, I'm happy because that means minimal work and maximizing on profit. So I think It's a good move.
Yeah, no, for sure. Deck, you want to play devil's advocate or no? Are you feeling the same way?
Yeah, no, Tyler said everything correct. I mean, Jimmy G pretty much knew, and his camp knew, that he was not going to get traded. There's nobody going to be out there that was going to trade for him in his market. Like he said, it was very cold, and he gets to stay on a contending team instead of going to a team where he could have been on a rebuilding team for anything. And then his camp ends up getting him a contract, become highest paid backup in the league, and he gets to stay and continue. And it's also very helpful for Trey Lance because you get to keep Jimmy G as a mentor to you, and Jimmy G is obviously a guy that's been there in the Super Bowl and won a Super Bowl as a backup with Brady, and so Jimmy G's been there, and and in a big year for Trey Lance and a big breakout type year for him, he gets to keep a mentor there instead of a random backup like Nate Sudfeld or someone that hasn't been there. So a win for both sides.
Imagine we see like a 2017 Eagles season for the 49ers where Trey Lance has this MVP caliber season, and then come playoff times he gets hurt. And, who's the journeyman backup? I guess I wouldn't label him a journeyman, but
No.
who's the backup ready to fill his shoes? Oh, it's Jimmy Garoppolo. And, I could see that happening. They got a good enough defense and a good enough offensive supporting cast for that scenario to play out. Would be cool, storyline-wise.
Yeah, the NFL scriptwriters would be salivating for Jimmy G to get his redemption arc as a backup in the Super Bowl. I think if that's the case, we might see a Niners Chiefs Super Bowl or something like that. Yep. So that's definitely good news for them, and there's more good news for another team in the NFC, which is the Philadelphia Eagles. They traded for Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, who will most likely be playing in the slot next to two other very good corners, being Slay and James Bradbury. Guys, how are we feeling about this move? Do we think that this affects the Saints more or the Eagles more in terms of what they received?
Yeah, I think this could be more beneficial for the Eagles for sure, just because I think their most glaring weakness on defense now, or at least one of them. I mean, linebacker, adding Nakobe Dean and then getting Hassan Reddick off the edge is definitely big for that group. But safety was definitely noticeably weak per se for them. I mean, Anthony Harris, as we knew with the Vikings, has his good moments and has his bad moments. Marcus Epps, who's their starting strong safety right now, I believe, is I saw Peter Schrager actually list him as one of his breakout players for this year, and Marcus Epps could be in for a big year. But I think what I'm hearing is that I think Gardner Johnson, who did more of he would go from safety, go to the slot in New Orleans. I'm thinking now he more so goes to the just strictly safety, because you got your boundary corners and Slay and Bradbury for sure, but I think keeping Gardner Johnson at safety is obviously I think the move they're going to end up doing because then they traded for Gardner Johnson, then immediately afterwards cut Anthony Harris. Mm-hmm. So to me that signals like it's just going to be immediate step in, and Gardner Johnson is definitely the better player in that situation. Anthony Harris, like I said, has his moments, ups and downs, but Gardner Johnson's just a more impactful player. He's younger. He's comes from a winning pedigree in New Orleans, or from a good defense. And Howie Roseman, the guy's obviously had his ups and downs. He's has bad moments for sure as a GM. I think right now he's just in the midst of he's in a good streak, because this is a great move for them again. Solidifying getting stronger at a position, and then adding James Bradbury to that corner group this offseason, and then bringing in Jordan Davis in the draft and Kobe Dean to address the D-line and add to the D-line and add to the linebacker room. Yeah. This is just I'm just pretty impressed by Howie Roseman right now. He's doing really good things for that Eagles team.
Yeah, and another thing just to say that other than the Anthony Harris cut that's going to put Gardner Johnson at safety is they got Avonte Maddox at slot corner already, and he's very, very solid in there. So maybe an emergency or in different packages they might move him down to another slot corner, but I'm pretty sure that he's going to be playing high safety.
Yeah, I mean, obviously both of those scenarios would make sense, but they definitely added a good piece there.
Yeah, and like Bradbury's a good player, but he's definitely not who he used to be. So just putting better players around him is definitely obviously going to be beneficial. So their cornerbacks are getting up there in age. Like Slay played really well last year, and we have to let's see if he can do it again a year older. And Bradbury just has to play better than last year, because he was definitely a step down than what he usually plays as. So they have probably the most complete roster in football right now. The Eagles do, and I would say the two quarterbacks that are under the most pressure right now is definitely Jalen Hurts now and Tua, because those guys are two young guys and they have all the pieces around them to win. Now they just got to see if they can do it.
Yeah, definitely. That's definitely going to be something that they're going to want to watch because they were kind of moving on from Hurts last year, but they definitely kept him around. So it's definitely, I think, a prove-it year for Hurts especially.
Definitely.
And so now to move on, we have some news coming out of Carolina. The Panthers traded for Jaguars receiver Laviska Shenault. And, of course, that move is fine. Like, there's been a lot of receivers moving around today. But do we think that this will have any impact on where Mr. What's his name? It's Robbie Anderson. Where do we think that he's going to stay in place? Or if not, where do we think Robbie Anderson might be going that better suits his skills and would give the Panthers some value in return?
Do you know what they traded for Shenault? I can't remember.
I think it was all draft capital. I should have written that down.
No, you're good. I'm looking it up right now.
All right, cool.
It was a... I cannot find it. Oh, here it is. Oh. Just kidding. I can't find it. Well, whatever it was, it probably wasn't that much.
2023 7th round pick and a 2024 6th round pick.
Yeah.
It's pennies.
Yeah, so, pennies. I doubt any of those draft picks make the roster. So, basically, pennies. And, Shenault, I believe, got drafted in the second round in his year. And he had a lot of promise coming out of Colorado. And I actually wanted the Packers to draft him the year that he was coming out. So I know a little bit about his skill set. He's like a Debo. He could be like a Debo-esque. He's like a bigger built guy. And, obviously he wasn't able to show it in Jacksonville. And now he's got Baker thrown to him in Carolina. So, he might not still be the best. Isn't an upgrade from Robbie Anderson or Terrence Marshall. Who's to say? We haven't seen a whole lot from those guys. I mean, it's like, bad quarterback to mediocre quarterback can only do so much for you. And I think, he slots in as the wide receiver 3 or 4 on that team right now, depending on how they see Terrence Marshall. But nevertheless, wide receiver depth is, very important. So I definitely think it's a good move for Carolina, especially as they try to just beef up that offense a little bit more, as their defense is okay. So
yeah, you gotta think maybe that one of Robbie Anderson or Terrence Marshall goes. Mm-hmm. And if I had to put money, I'd probably say Robbie Anderson, just because Terrence Marshall entering year 2, I want to see a little bit more from him. You kind of know what you get from Robbie Anderson.
I would agree.
You kind of hope you kind of hope maybe Shenault does something with the opportunity. Obviously, he had high hopes with Jacksonville. He was, what was that, 2020 he got drafted, so that first year and into even last year, he was at one point wide receiver 2, I believe, up in that category behind Marvin Jones. And now in Jacksonville, he just got absolutely buried. I mean, you still got Marvin Jones. You bring in Christian Kirk. They brought in Zay Jones. I mean, the list goes on. He just ended up going farther and farther down that depth chart. So, maybe a fresh start in the receiving room with obviously DJ Moore slotted in at number 1. But if Robbie or Terrence Marshall goes, he has a chance to, feel comfortable in his role and try to do something with it and succeed.
Yeah. And I think Robbie Anderson will probably not have that much, obviously, trade appeal, but a depth piece. He's a lot like Will Fuller, who hasn't even been signed by a team yet, just a burner deep threat. So I think a team who needs one of those, the Packers need one of those for sure. Do I want to trade for Robbie Anderson? No. But, teams, I think, just wide receiver needy teams, maybe the Texans just throw a dart at Robbie Anderson to help Davis Mills. So, I mean, I'm sure there's a market out there seeing how Laviska got traded and he's still not proven anything. So, I mean, you have to think Anderson, who's a vet, would have a market. So,
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I could definitely see somebody like the Texans. Granted, actually, going to my next player point. Yeah, the Texans are scooping up a lot of receivers the past couple of days. For example, the Buccaneers dropped Tyler Johnson out of Minnesota, and the Houston Texans picked him up off of the waivers. Well, Decker, you're a big Minnesota sports guy. So what do you think that the Texans will be getting out of still young and promising receiver Tyler Johnson?
Yeah, this one hurt a lot for me. When I saw that when the Bucks cut him, it was definitely a surprising one. Just because the future of, I mean, obviously Julio seems he's going to be a one and done there. The future of, long-term future of Evans and Godwin there, and obviously Russell Gage won't be a long-term fixture there, but Tyler Johnson ended up getting buried obviously with a stacked receiver room like that. But I just love. I mean, he's from Minneapolis, and we went to Minneapolis North High School, dominated there, played for the Gophers, had a great run there, and then got drafted in the 5th round, I believe it was, in 2020 by the Bucks. And he showed times. Obviously him and Brady had some differences where they were off a little bit on their connection, but he still showed a lot of promising moments. Obviously, he's not out of the both Gophers that got drafted that year by the Bucks and Winfield and Johnson. Obviously, Winfield the more prominent player, but I still like what Johnson can do in the future. But if the Texans I think we were 12th on the waiver order, and Texans were high up in the waiver order. I can't remember exactly what spot, but Texans beating us out to that one kind of hurt, because I would have loved to have seen Johnson get a chance to come back home, be like our wide receiver 5. Mm-hmm. And obviously, the Vikes kind of did some other moves in that, which we'll get to.
Vikings picked up another wide receiver 5, or traded.
But we're not there yet on the document. All right, we have to wait a little bit.
Okay, sorry.
No, that's okay.
Yeah,
I'll let you segue into this.
I've got it all planned out.
I'll just say, on the point of the Texans, and just talking about like Robbie Anderson and now Tyler Johnson going there, it doesn't hurt the Texans. Just it's dart throwing for them. They just got to see what sticks, and like Decker said, Johnson showed a little promise in Tampa. So I mean, even if he turns out to be like, just a backup wide receiver, that's totally fine by Texans standards. So I think it's a good pickup nonetheless, just to get a wide receiver that you can develop. So
yeah, exactly, because it's definitely gonna be interesting to see what he can do, not being buried on a depth chart, because the only guy in front of him is probably Brandon Cooks. So it's going to be interesting to see like what he could do with possibly a larger target share. And now to move on, we have some news in the tight end department today. Starting off with the Bills releasing O.J. Howard. He is I think a 4th-year tight end out of Alabama, and he was currently working out with the Bengals. He hasn't been signed yet, but it sounds like if his physical goes well, he's going to be signed. And then I'm even add to certainty, while the Bengals released the son of Randy Moss, Thaddeus Moss, who is also a tight end. I mean, obviously, Thaddeus hasn't been able to prove himself very much, but do we think that perhaps Howard will find a place to stick in the Bengals offense?
I always wanted O.J. Howard to be good, but I think just the fact that he got cut by the Bills when they have Dawson Knox as their tight end 1, who himself is pretty undersized for tight end position. And, it just kind of goes to show that O.J. Howard probably isn't the best player anymore. And, his draft capital would say otherwise, but, he was drafted a long time ago. So I honestly couldn't tell you, though, who the better tight end is in Cincinnati now between him and Hurst. I would think it's Hurst, but, it just comes down to what they need out of that player. Who's the better run blocker? I think whoever the better run blocker is going to see the field more often. I think that's just how it's going to be.
Yeah, especially
Or
with the amount of
blocker.
receivers.
I should say blocker, just in general. Sorry.
Yeah, with the amount of receivers they have, I definitely think that the tight end might take more of a back seat in the passing game. Anyways, Decker, what are your thoughts on the OJ Howard?
Yeah, this one kind of came back to bite me. I know I talked with you about this, Sam. I might have with you as well, Tyler. But I had some high hopes for Hayden Hurst this year. I took him in fantasy football with my last draft pick. I'm like, my thought process behind it was, Hayden Hurst was a first round pick in Baltimore. Obviously, he ended up being in the same draft as Mark Andrews. Mark Andrews came out to be the better player in that deal. Hayden Hurst then goes to Atlanta. Fresh start from a former first round pick. Last year, obviously, they ended up drafting a generational tight end in Kyle Pitts. So this year coming to Cincinnati, I'm going, man, Hayden Hurst, high scoring offense, which should be this year, with great receivers around it, great passer in Joe Burrow. So I figured, Hayden Hurst has a fresh start. He's by himself in that tight end room. Maybe he can do something special. Obviously, now they bring in OJ Howard, which, like Tyler said, he's a former. I think he was actually the number 10 pick in his draft class then, and I just think at this point I think it's just he'll be probably bouncing around. I think if the Bills could, the Bucks, obviously he kind of got buried behind Brate, and then when Gronk got there, and the hope was for him that maybe the Bills can untap something that's still there. And I think that with them ultimately cutting him, I just don't think there's much for him anymore as a player to be this, possible Pro Bowl tight end. I think he's just, however long he plays in the NFL now, I think he'll just now be either a average starter or just a plain backup, which obviously is a little sad to see, but I think that's just the reality of OJ. Yeah. But as far as the Bengals, maybe we'll have to see how it plays out between him and Hurst.
Yeah, and I mean, in all honesty, it's like, yeah, Hurst is now like a, or gonna be playing in Cincinnati, but they've had Drew Sample there for a couple of years now, and he's actually a pretty good blocker himself. So, like, if we see like more heavy sets, I think Drew Sample's probably gonna get most of the work. Hurst himself is not the best blocker. He's definitely more of a pass catcher. And, I genuinely haven't seen enough from OJ Howard to tell you if he's a good enough blocker to get in there. So, yeah, I think Drew Sample might be the guy in Cincinnati.
Yeah, it's definitely possible. I'm really looking at who has the most experience with that system. It's definitely Drew Sample right now, especially with CJ Uzuma or something like that. Uzama, thank you. Moving on from the franchise, go to the Jets. Well, now to move on, we have my little block of Vikings news. And we're going to start off with the Vikings making quite a surprising move. They released quarterback Kellen Mond, who was then picked up in the waivers by the Browns. And then the Browns subsequently released quarterback Josh Rosen, who is now trying to find his 16th team or whatever he's on right now. So I guess I'm just curious, guys. So what do we think about the Kellen Mond experience? And do we think Josh Rosen's going to end up somewhere else? Will he keep jumping around, living out of his little kind of like hobo stick and thing? Yeah, that thing. So yeah. Thoughts on Mond and Rosen?
Yeah, I think the biggest takeaway with all this is just to show from the Vikings' perspective with Mond. Mike Zimmer was just pretty much right. As hard as it is to say, Rick Spielman just flat out whiffed on all these third-round draft picks and all these picks from the 2021 class. I mean, trust me, when we drafted Mond, I was ecstatic. I just thought, an SEC quarterback, big arm in college, mobile. He beat Joe Burrow in college at LSU. And back in 2018, and I thought for sure this guy could end up becoming at least a competent backup by year 2, and possible Kirk Cousins replacement if all went right. But the kid just, it's sad to see, but he just doesn't have it. I just don't see him doing much in this league at all. Something's not clicking. He can barely hold on to a snap in practice. He just doesn't seem to begin plays, and even when receivers wide open, he's missing them. Something about Mond is just I think the NFL stage is just too big for him. Stefanski can try and take a try and take a hit with him in Cleveland, but I just don't see him lasting around much. I don't think there's much there. And then as far as the Rosen standpoint, I'm sure he'll ending up on a practice squad or something. But that, if you want to talk about an even bigger mess than Mond, Josh Rosen would be it, because this guy was the number 10 overall pick in 2018, and he is a complete bust.
Yeah. I mean, as a Packers fan, you hear, like, right after the draft, like, oh my God, the Vikings just had an A-plus draft. Holy crap. This is back in 2021, and, looking back on it, it's like, man, what, like, not saying that the Packers draft any better, but there's just a lot of whiffs on this, and hard whiffs. Like, has Wyatt Davis played any games for you guys?
Wyatt Davis never played a game, and he also got cut.
Yep,
yesterday.
he got cut as well.
There was something majorly. He got injured in the last game of his career at Ohio State, and something's lingering there where Wyatt Davis is just as awful.
I want to say the only two. Well, is Bynum still on the team?
Yeah, Bynum is going to be a week one starter.
So you still got Kenne, Bynum, and Jalen Twyman, right? That's about it from that
Twyman
2021.
also got released.
Twyman also
got cut, but ended up on the practice squad. So at that draft class, the only ones that really stick out is obviously Darisaw first round. Patrick Jones will be a rotational edge rusher.
Oh, Jones is
Kenne will be kick returner, and then Cam Bynum will be week one starter. But out of those four, that's about it.
Man, it's not to say it's not satisfying to see, like, just that then the draft that everyone was praising to just kind of implode when this new regime comes in. It is satisfying to see that as a Packers fan.
And
it's more of like an I told you so too.
Well, if I may say something, whenever I think about, we only got like 4 good players from this draft.
You would say they're 4 good players? You would say they're 4 good players.
Four players that are on the roster.
You would define Kenne Nwangu as 4. You would define Kenne Nwangu as good.
Yeah. Guy could be Dude could be a pro.
You would define Cameron Bynum as good.
Cam Bynum's a week 1 starter. He's a second-year player. He could be good. I genuinely believe that. Okay.
Could be good. Listen to yourself. Could be good.
Okay, well, I mean, the flashes that we got to see last year, we started that one game, I think it was against the Rams, right?
Or the Ravens, where he picked off Lamar.
Oh, yeah, Ravens. Yeah, see? He's shown some flashes. He's definitely a guy that clearly, if he's getting the starting job, he's shown a lot of good. So yes, I would say we have 4 good players, maybe 3 if you don't want to count Kenne, but he could be a possible Pro Bowl returner. Perhaps if we're going to say that Devin Hester can get in the Hall of Fame, you can call a good returner a good player. I believe that. But if I may continue, I was just going to add that while the Vikings don't draft the best in the league, at the very least we are not the Raiders. Because the Raiders drafted...
I mean, that's fair, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Because
but it's
the Raiders drafted...
It's like, as a Packers fan, you just see this, like, bubble around Vikings drafts the past couple years. Oh, my God, the Vikings did it again. They just had this amazing draft. And then you look at the Packers. Oh, Packers just had such a mediocre draft. Packers, I would say, definitely drafted 4 good players in the 2021 draft. Definitely.
Name them.
Like, there's no debating
Name them.
Eric Stokes, Josh Myers, Amari Rodgers, Royce Newman. Those are our top 4 picks.
Who's Amari Rodgers again? He's the receiver?
Receiver, returner. Not to mention we just traded Cole Van Lannon, who was a 6th-round pick. We got pennies for him. But and then Kylan Hill in the last, if he didn't get hurt, he would be our 3rd string back. He's actually pretty I would call him good. He's decent. He's very, very shifty. He could develop into something. But that right there, those are 4 good players, okay?
I think it's hilarious how you named your 4th-string running back as a good player, but then I named like a starter, and you're like, oh, he's trash.
Did I say I said he was decent? Okay. I didn't say he was good. I said he was decent.
No, but I actually named a good
post. I saw Kylan Hill. I'm like, oh, he's decent as for a 7th-round pick, because usually 7th-round picks get cut. They don't usually make the roster. Kylan Hill made the roster because he's actually decent. Okay.
We got a little off track.
Now,
thank you.
My point still stands. I think the Packers had the better draft. Okay.
1 year. Okay. Now, if we may continue to the next bullet point, we have the Raiders, who released their 1st-round pick from, I think it was a year ago, right? 2020 or 2021? It was Alex Leatherwood. And he was very quickly picked up by the Bears, who will take really anyone at this point to play on their line. So I guess, do we think that there will be any kind of career saving power by the Chicago Bears, or do we think that Leatherwood will be just another brick in the wall of hopefully Justin Fields won't die?
No, he's going to get cut.
Yeah, I don't see him lasting long at all. It's just, just to look at from the Raiders side of all this. When you look back at the Mike Mayock era, obviously, decent guy to have in the NFL Network broadcast booth for many years, but when he took over as GM in 2018, you look at his 1st-round draft picks that he had. To list them off, it was Colton Miller. Okay, Colton Miller.
Hit.
Still
good. Very
good
good tackle
for them.
Very good tackle.
After that, it gets very, very dicey. 2019, you have 3 first-round picks. Cleveland Ferrell, Josh Jacobs, Jonathan Abram.
All denied.
All of them are still on the team.
All denied.
All declined.
Yeah, 5th-year options.
Yep, all got declined 5th-year options. You look at 2020, even worse. Henry Ruggs. Good potential. Obviously had a very, very bad off-the-field issue. And even, maybe not as bad as an off-the-field issue as Henry Ruggs, because obviously Henry Ruggs ended up, killing someone. But Damon Arnett, cornerback out of Ohio State, twice being arrested since he was drafted. Obviously, the first one is the threatening video he had that had him get cut, and then afterwards got in trouble again. And then last year with Alex Leatherwood, who just a year later is cut. So the Mike Mayock picks were awful picks, and you just gotta shake your head at just the Raiders in general, because that is just awful to be able to whiff on that many picks. But yeah, to go back on the Leatherwood, I can't see him turning into much.
Yeah.
The Bears obviously just
don't have
a good history.
This just the Raiders are so fortunate that they have Colton Miller, because if they didn't, they would definitely be with the Bears and having a bottom 5 offensive line. The Bears most definitely have a bottom 5 offensive line, if not the worst in football. And this signing of Alex Leatherwood just speaks to that, to their, just how desperate they really are. So, but to put into context, the Raiders drafted Alex Leatherwood, who many people thought to be like a 2nd to 3rd round pick. They drafted him in front of your beloved Christian Darrisaw, who I thought at the time was the much better prospect also. Same with Landon Dickerson, who's had a decent role in Philly, and Tevin Jenkins, who, now we see he might get cut or traded in Chicago, but also who we thought he was better. So, it's just it was the consistent misses that makes the Raiders organization just so laughable when it comes to draft season, man. It's just so bad. And you know what? I hated the Devontae Adams move, but good on them for realizing that they suck at drafting, because, if it takes 4 draft picks to get a player Devontae Adams caliber, go for it. Especially if you're the Raiders when you suck at drafting. So
Yeah. Because it's definitely really bad when you're, like, watching the draft each year, and then, like, the guys who are, commentating on it, because they're usually, like, very positive about the players that are picked. And I remember, like, when Clelin Ferrell was taken and when Leatherwood was taken, most of the time they even comment about how they were picked way higher than they were projected.
Yeah.
And they know, obviously, it shows because both are probably not going to be on the team by next year.
The one this year was Cole Strange, so I'm excited to see how he turns out in New England.
Yeah, but Bill's arguably smarter than Mike Mayock, so hopefully that does work out for them.
Even looking back at their other, Mike Mayock's drafts, you go back to 2019. Obviously, the Furl, Jacobs, Abram, first-round picks, all of them having their fifth-year decline. They just traded their second-round pick from that year in Trayvon Mullen to the Cardinals.
Mm-hmm.
But afterwards,
totally forgot about that.
Afterwards, the mid-rounds, Mayock actually did pretty good. Max Crosby in the fourth round.
Yeah.
Foster Moreau, who's a competent backup. Darren Waller, fourth round as well. And then Hunter Renfrow, great slot receiver in the fifth. And then 2020, like I said, with the Ruggs and Arnett picks, who are both gone as well. Lynn Bowden was a third-round pick for them, who they traded before he even suited up in a game for them.
Mm-hmm.
And then Brian Edwards was a third-round pick, and he also just got traded after year two. So, yeah, Mike Mayock is... That entire Raiders draft history is just...
Broken clock is right twice a day. Or three times in one draft, I guess you could say.
Yeah. Well, that is the news that we wanted to cover this week. Obviously there were a lot of moves, but those were the ones that we thought were the highlights. But we have another segment that we want to run by you guys today, and that is our end of the preseason hot takes. So we've all prepared 3 hot takes for you today. We have our least hot, we have our middle hot. We're getting a little spicy in the kitchen, and then we got our boom, the bomb in your mouth kind of hot takes. So
that's how I define a hot take. Boom, the bomb in your mouth kind of hot take.
Yeah, put that on a t-shirt. Anyways, so I believe the best way to do this, we can obviously change it if you boys want to, but I think that we could all share our least hot, then we all share our middle hot, and then we share our bomb in your mouth hot. So
sounds good.
Okay, so I'm fine to start with my least hot, like most plausible hot take, and that is that I believe that there's a high chance that the quarterback that will lead the league in touchdowns this year will be Kirk Cousins. Hear me out.
Oh my God.
Hear me out. Right? KOC has turned us from a run-first offense to a pass-first offense. Kirk last year, in a run-first offense, had 33 touchdowns, 10 behind Tom, who had 43. And now, obviously, 10 is a pretty big number to be going in between. But Kirk has always been higher up in that echelon of touchdowns. I think in every year that he started, he's had higher than like 25. Since getting to the Vikings, he's had 28, 35, and 33. I think I'm missing a year. But anyways, I genuinely believe that in a pass-first offense, it's certainly possible. Plus, like, it's not often that a QB gets that high of touchdowns. Usually looking like the high 30s. So I certainly think for Kirk to lead the league in touchdowns is not out of the realm possibility, but it's still kind of spicy. Boys, thoughts?
On the first episode, when we talked about how you two are the Vikings fans and I'm the single Packer fan, and I got to try to, like, tame the two biases you might have, and you do the same here. Sam, that has got to be the most biased hot take I have ever heard in my life.
Okay, well,
yes,
you don't listen
that,
to Adam Rank.
Okay, fair. But
Thank you.
Adam Rank aside, you got, rightfully so, you have Justin Jefferson as your offensive player of the year. And now you got Kirk Cousins possibly being an MVP candidate with throwing the most touchdowns in the league. I personally just cannot see it behind that offensive line. I don't think they're going to give him enough time. I think it's, obviously Justin Jefferson's going to do what he does and get what he gets. But I just don't think... And it comes down to, like, the elite status, is Kirk Cousins elite? Because that's the quarterbacks that are the guys that lead the league in touchdowns and yards and efficiency. And to me, as an unbiased Packer fan, Kirk Cousins is very good. Is he elite? I'm afraid not. So, while it's a hot take, I can't see it happening.
I think I should add quick that that I do think that if Kirk is the highest in touchdowns, I definitely think he'll be like a Matthew Stafford type, where he will have like the 38 to 40 touchdowns, but also a pretty high number in interceptions. Because the reason why I think that he's always pretty high in touchdowns, but doesn't get to the highest level, is because he's often too careful. And so I think to reach this level, he's gonna have to be less careful. So I do think that if it happens, he'll be quite high in interceptions, which won't give him the MVP, but I think he could lead it in stats. Decker, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, Kirk, since 2015, Kirk's obviously had 25 or more touchdown passes in every year since 2015, but so it's for 95. I'll say 90% sure this year that he'll be a 25 or above, but it's just tough competition. Patty's gonna get his touchdowns, Rodgers gonna get his touchdowns, Brady's gonna get his touchdowns.
It's certainly
Herbert.
a hot take.
Yes.
It's hot. I don't want to say it can never happen because it's NFL. Injuries can happen. Players can never perform for sure, but it's definitely very hot, and we'll have to see how it plays out, Mr. Sam.
All right. Well, whose moderately hot take will we be getting to next?
I'll
How
go.
about you go?
I'll go.
Okay,
Yeah,
Tyler,
I'll go. Deck, you can end this round. Okay, so at the end of preseason, and we see the cuts, and if you're a fantasy football player, you've seen one name just shooting up boards recently, and that's Dameon Pierce, the running back for the Texans. We gave our predictions for Offensive Rookie of the Year, or all the awards, I should say. And for Offensive Rookie of the Year, I had Christian Watson. Looking back on that now, I wish I could change it to Dameon Pierce because, man, I think this guy has a great chance to win Offensive Rookie of the Year. For a running back to do it, you just got to be not only efficient with the ball, you got to be able to catch the ball too. Dameon Pierce, in the preseason games that he had 11 touches or 11 rushes for 86 yards, which is insanely efficient on the ground, and he's proven that he's a good pass catcher. So, running behind this decent O-line, he could definitely eclipse 1,000 yards. And for a rookie running back in that situation, I definitely think that's enough to win him Offensive Rookie of the Year. And I think the great thing about this is there in the first round of this year's draft, we saw so many wide receivers go, and we saw the running backs go late, and Dameon Pierce wasn't even one of the highest drafted running backs. So that's why I think that this is a sneaky dark horse pick for Offensive Rookie of the Year being Dameon Pierce.
Yeah, that's certainly possible, and I really hope you're right because I have him in our fantasy league. And I think the reason why none of us really chose running backs during our first predictions is because at that time there really wasn't any running back that had that clear-cut starter because it was maybe Breece Hall, but Breece Hall's on the Jets, and then you had Kenneth Walker behind Rashad Penny and James Cook behind Singletary and Zach Moss. So that's why I think we all went receiver for our predictions initially. But I definitely think that that's possible for Pierce, especially with Marlon Mack being released. So I'd love to see it. Decker, anything to add to that?
Let me just ask you this. Let's say Breece Hall, James Cook, and Kenneth Walker are all named starters on their team, but they still got the people behind them that are going to get their touches. And Dameon Pierce is the clear-cut starter in Houston. Would you still not have Dameon Pierce as your offensive rookie of the year? Because I'm pretty sure I would. Over all those running backs and over all those wide receivers. I just think that there's just such a clear workload for him, and he has such a great skill set.
Yeah, no, because I definitely say that if we did name them all starters, the only one that could possibly eclipse him would be James Cook, simply because the supporting cast is better than all of them.
See, I disagree. James Cook just isn't an efficient enough runner. He's too small. I thought you were going to say, like, Breece Hall or Kenneth Walker, because those guys are much better runners. But James Cook is just going to be a third down passing back.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No, that's okay. It's just I was looking at, like, supporting groups and, like, O-lines, and Cooks is definitely the strongest. But with that being said, I would definitely still say that Pierce has the best shot, since there is absolutely no competition besides the fossil that is Rex Burkhead. Yes. Decker, anything to add to that one?
Yeah, no. Yeah, you guys hit it right spot. I mean, the only competition now is, Royce Freeman got cut today, and then Marlon Mack obviously yesterday. So it's only Rex Burkhead, and Rex Burkhead is really just, a third down passing type option for them. So this is Dameon Pierce's backfield to lose. So.
Yeah, I don't see Rex Burkhead taking any work from Dameon Pierce. He's just such a great third down back, as he's proven in the preseason and in college. So,
yep.
For a hot take, I'm actually pretty confident about this one. Not gonna lie.
Yeah, I mean, I am too. Deck, what's your least spicy take of the evening?
Okay, yeah. So for my first one, it would be one that's definitely rumored out there. I wouldn't say it would happen in season, but definitely after season it's been thrown around for sure. I'm going to go with Mike McCarthy gets fired mid-season. Now, I know I said a couple episodes ago, I believe the last episode when we did our NFC preview, I had Mike McCarthy, pretty much going to be out after this year, and maybe Jerry Jones goes big fish hunting with Sean Payton, so obviously still out there. Sean Payton resigned from the Saints, and then he's going to take this year off from coaching, but I think a year off and then next year coming back, hopefully rejuvenate for him. I could just see Jerry Jones, especially if the Cowboys are underperforming. Let's say, obviously with CD going to be starting the year as the wide receiver one, and really besides him and Schultz, and then whenever Gallup comes back, those three as the receivers. Zeke's definitely on the decline and then with Pollard coming up, but Zeke going down. And, the O-line is a lot of questions with Tyron Smith and going down. And, it's just kind of a fluxer with that O-line right now. And then defensively should take a step back this year. So there's definitely a lot of things that could happen to the Cowboys where they could definitely be underperforming by midseason. And I think if they are, 2 games behind or so from the Eagles, if the Eagles just get this fast start, they take control first, Cowboys are 500 or a game below, and they're 2 or 3 games behind the Eagles, I could definitely see Jerry Jones just saying, you know what, we're gonna get rid of McCarthy. Maybe who knows, Kellen Moore goes in there as interim head coach or whatever to finish out, or Dan Quinn to finish out the year, and then come next season, Sean Payton comes in and Jerry ends up getting his guy. But I think Mike McCarthy, regardless, will be on his way out. I'm gonna say that maybe the Cowboys go off to a slow start by week 9 or 10. Mike McCarthy could be on his way out if things go very wrong.
Yeah,
I just think there's too much. I just think there's too much talent on that team for them to fire their coach midway through season. Mostly, when you see a coach getting fired midway through season, it's when the roster is absolutely trash and they just need a culture change. But I like the take. I think regardless if it's midseason or not, I think McCarthy's out of there. But I don't think it'll be midseason. I don't think Jerry Jones is that hot-headed.
Yeah, I mean, it's because I think, kind of similar to what Tyler said, I feel like for that to happen, not even a roster thing, but I feel like they'd have to be at a really bad start. We're talking 1-6 or something for him to get cut mid-season. Because I imagine Jerry Jones would be like, well, my roster's too good for 1-6. It must be the coach. And then he would maybe make that change mid-season. But I feel like if they are going to hover around 500, which I think that's their floor with a roster like that, then I think McCarthy makes it through the whole year. But it's definitely not impossible. But that's what the hot takes are for.
Yeah,
Because we're trying to make
I looked
the impossible possible.
Yeah, so I looked it up, and the last time that's a Cowboys coach got fired midseason was Wade Phillips in 2010 when the Cowboys ended up starting 1-7, and then Jason Garrett took over, and then he was there for a long time. So, Jerry's done it before, but we'll have to obviously wait and see how that goes. I'm not saying the Cowboys will be 1-8 or something.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll see.
All right. Well, those are the mildly spicy takes. Now we're gonna take her up a notch, and I'd be willing to start with this one.
Yeah, go ahead.
I have a defensive rookie of the year pick. And they are on the Detroit Lions. And their name is not Aiden Hutchinson. Maybe I'm riding on that Hard Knocks high, but I think that Malcolm Rodriguez could put up a stat pile big enough to get himself the defensive rookie of the year. When you think about it, he's already going to be a day one starter for that team. They have an easier record than most. I was looking at some of the stuff he did. Like, he was really good at moving around. Kind of reminded me like a Luke Kuechly kind of type where he can move around the field very well. Obviously, do I think he's as good of a player as Luke Kuechly? Because I see your guys' reactions on my screen. I don't think he's Luke Kuechly yet. But he can move around pretty well. Can he put up the stats to maybe get that done? Who knows? I think that'd be
Sam,
fun.
What stats do you need to put up in order to win Rookie of the Year as a linebacker?
Rookie of the Year. Well, I would say tackles got to be above 70, like total, not like solo, but total. I would say tackles for loss have to be above 15, we'll say. And maybe that's slightly high. I'm just kind of airballing it a little bit.
Yeah, so, I just bring that up because it is pretty hard for linebackers to win or defensive rookie of the year. Obviously, the last one to do it, I believe, was Shaq Leonard. Getting used to that name.
Yeah.
But that's just because he was a turnover machine. And that's what won him defensive rookie of the year. So that's why it's so hard for linebackers to get it, because they just don't put up the sexy stats. Like tackles. It's not really a sexy stat. Turnovers are though, because turnovers win games. So that's why Shaq Leonard won it the year he did. But it's a fun pick. I think obviously Hutchinson as an edge rusher has a much better chance to winning, and it's blasphemy to even compare Rodrigo to Luke Kuechly at this point. But
yes, obviously.
Kuechly is just so much bigger and just so much faster than this guy and than Rodrigo. But it's definitely a spicy take, Sam.
Yeah. Sorry, I didn't realize that we didn't want spicy takes at our spicy take thing. Okay.
But they gotta be realistic, is the thing.
Okay. Well, Decker, do you want to parade my corpse around as well, or do you just want to move on?
Yeah, we'll take that take and we'll just throw that to the side for now.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, when.
Okay, my number.
Yeah. Sorry. You go.
Okay. My number 2 would be a guy that me and Wontalk picked as comeback player of the year for this upcoming year. And I could see him even taking a step farther. I have Jameis Winston finds himself in the MVP race this year. My reasoning behind this is he's definitely got a supporting cast around. There's no doubt about that. You got Michael Thomas coming back from injury with the ankle injury. You have Chris Olave, a first-round receiver who they drafted this year out of Ohio State. And then you bring in Jarvis Landry from, obviously, a veteran receiver who used to play for the Dolphins and the Browns. And Adam Troutman, also coming back from injury at tight end, who was a pretty talented pass-catching tight end. And also with the Saints, staying in the house with Dennis Allen, their former defensive coordinator, now promoting him to head coach. They kept Pete Carmichael, who was who's been their OC since 2009, which doesn't even feel like it because this is a guy that I'm sure a lot of people haven't heard of, and he never really gets interviewed for head coaching gigs. But he was definitely Sean Payton's right-hand man for many years, and the Saints keep him. And this was a guy that very much helped out Drew Brees in his career, and took him to a Hall of Fame level as well. Just being able to keep him at such great play all those years, and obviously Jameis is going to have his picks. There's no doubt about that. That's just Jameis is going to throw a lot. He's going to throw a lot of touchdowns. He's going to throw a lot of picks, but I think maybe the picks could maybe take a little decrease down. I think it'll still be a fairly high number per se, but I think the touchdowns and maybe the yards, and with the team success, I could definitely see Jameis, surprising many and maybe putting himself in contention come year's end with the award voters.
Yeah, well, didn't he I think got to mid-season he had 14 touchdowns and 3 interceptions, right? Something like that.
Let me look back.
Because if it's,
I know.
I have a thought. We see. I'm just gonna play devil's advocate for both you guys, because we saw Jameis Winston holding back a Super Bowl caliber offense in Tampa Bay. Tom Brady goes in there and wins them a damn Super Bowl. So, and Jameis Winston did have that really good stat line, but he was just really really inaccurate last year in play. And if a few of those passes end up a couple inches right or left, that's another pick to the total. So I think with a full year of play and even just a little bit more inaccuracy from Jameis Winston, I think you'll see those picks rise again to regular Jameis status. So, that's just me playing devil's advocate. I really like Jameis Winston, though. I hope you're right about him, but there's plenty saying that he just doesn't have the accuracy and the skills to catapult him to MVP.
Yeah, that certainly could be an issue. Tyler, what is your moderately spicy hot take?
So I actually shifted. I told you guys that I was going to do both Hurts and Lance would be MVP candidates, but that's just like throwing spaghetti on a wall and seeing what sticks. I changed mine to one that I think both of you will like very, very much. Do you guys know before Cooper Kupp who the last person was to get a Triple Crown award was?
Exactly. Shit.
Go ahead. Let's see if you know it.
Calvin Johnson, right?
No. It was Steve Smith in 2005, and before him, it was Sterling Sharp in 90... Oh, God, what was it? 92? 92. And then before him was Jerry Rice in 1990, and then before him was Lance Allworth in 1966, right? So we see this huge disparity of Triple Crown winners in the NFL for a good reason. It's a super, super hard award or thing to achieve. But I think this year will be the first time in NFL history that we see back-to-back Triple Crown winners. And this year, I'm sad to say it, it's looking like it might be Justin Jefferson. If he takes the step to be the best wide receiver in the league, which very well could happen. He gets moved to a power slot position, which is kind of what he played in college and is what Cooper Kupp thrived in last year. It is the chips are in his, he's got whatever that metaphor is. He is able to lead the league. If you don't know, Triple Crown is leading the league in receptions, yards, and touchdowns. And going off of Sam's first take, I guess, with Kirk Cousins throwing the most touchdowns, most of those got to be going to Justin Jefferson. And, all he's got to do now is catch the ball and run with it. So, a lot more times, actually. So, but I think, just the evolution of football and seeing what Cooper Kupp did last year, it's really got to excite you for Justin Jefferson this year. And, if if things translate well and he does play in the slot like Cooper Kupp did last year, I think there's a very good chance that we see back-to-back Triple Crown winners, which is a very rare thing to happen. Well, it hasn't happened before, so I think it would just be cool to see, just as an NFL football fan. Forget Packers and Vikings. That would just be a cool piece of NFL history to see.
Yeah. So if I may say, quick, I genuinely believe that you picked us both apart, and then you thought you didn't want to get picked apart, so then you changed your answer to something that we couldn't possibly pick apart because it just makes me so goddamn happy. If you're right, man, it's going to be a happy day in the Sam Wontok
history,
household.
To play devil's advocate to myself, history definitely says otherwise, but, it would just be such a cool thing to happen that, I would not care. So, yeah, Justin Jefferson, Triple Crown. We'll see. Right. And I think that's a fairly spicy take. I think that's pretty damn spicy.
That is quite spicy.
I mean, when Cooper Kupp did it last year, it garnered just so many headlines. Just
it was the greatest wide receiver season of all time. It's simple, easy, cut and dry, the best. Now, can we see just as good of a season from Justin Jefferson? I guess we'll have to see.
Yeah. I guess sure. We'll see. We'll see in 18 weeks' time. Yeah. Now, to move on to our highest echelon of hot takes, I'd like to start us off, please, because my spiciest of the spiciest hot takes is that each division in the NFL this year will have a different winner. No one is going to repeat as a division winner. And now it sounds crazy when I say it, right? But it's not that far-fetched when you really think about what could change. You have the AFC West, and it was the Chiefs last year. That could easily be any team in that division, but I think it's safe to say we probably all agree that the Chargers have the best chance. You have the AFC North. That was the Bengals. That could easily be the Ravens this year. You had the Titans last year in the South. That could be the Colts this year. You had the Cowboys in the NFC East last year. That could be the most complete roster in the Eagles. And you had the Rams in the NFC West last year. That could be the Niners with Trey Lance and still Garoppolo backing them up. That could be the Niners winning that division. You had the Packers in the North.
Man, you're really going to go division by division, aren't you?
Vikings. Well, I have to prove the point, right? And now these are the two where it definitely muddies up the wheels a bit. It definitely stops this from being a solid that could definitely happen, but it could still happen. That's why it's a spicy boy. You have the Bucks. The Bucks, Panthers and Falcons, no shot, but Saints could definitely come in perhaps and take it over if Jameis plays well. I especially since the Saints really can't seem, or the Bucks really can't seem to beat the Saints in recent memory. The Saints have kind of owned the Buccaneers, and then the one that kind of stops the wheels is the Bills. But if Tua really comes off this year, Dolphins could win the division, and never count Billy B out. I mean, I know I had them going like 6-11, but you really can't ever count out Bill Belichick. So that's why I believe that each division will have a new winner this year.
All right. That's definitely spicy, Sam. I don't think it's going to happen. Obviously, the big one, Packers are going to win the North. Sorry, cut and dry. End it there. We are running out of time, so let's just we'll touch on ours real quick and just give two quick thoughts. I'll go first. My hottest take is that both teams in the Super Bowl last year, being the Rams and the Bengals, will miss the playoffs this year. Yes, I said it. They will both miss the playoffs. Now, this is more talking about the Rams missing the playoffs, and because we have seen some crazy things happen in the NFL. So who's to say that the Super Bowl hangover won't hit both of these teams? Rams, they have not great offensive line. It's below average. It's not horrible. It's obviously not like Raiders or Bears bad, but it's still not good. Cam Akers, when he came back from his Achilles injury, was super inefficient with the ball and looked like a guy who was coming off an Achilles injury, right? Never a good sign. So I think that rushing attack is going to be really, really bad. Actually, I don't think they're going to have a lot of momentum to pull from the run game, and not to mention they lost a lot of pieces. They lost an All-Pro, an All-Pro left tackle in Whitworth. They just lost some interior guys from injury, and it's Havenstein now is their best offensive tackle, and he's good, but it's the offensive line is definitely suspect for me. And going on to the other side of the ball, you replace Von Miller with I forget his name, but it's some bum. It's like Von Miller is exactly what this Rams needed to win the Super Bowl. He was the pass rush that was the final piece, and now they lose that. And now suddenly it's like everyone thinks that they're going to be the same team from last year, but they lost key pieces. And Jalen Ramsey's going to move back outside to because he was in slot cornerback. He's going to move back outside, and now I'm forgetting the other cornerback, but he's also a bum. He's going to get burnt a lot. And Bobby Wagner is so bad, okay? He is so slow and, just moves like a robot in there now. He's going to get burnt by Kittle and Ertz, I'm afraid. Maybe even Noah Fant. We'll throw him in there. Because in this league, middle linebackers need to be able to cover tight ends, especially with how versatile they're becoming. So I think this Rams defense is going to take a step back, and this Rams rushing game is going to take a step back. Not to mention Matthew Stafford is having trouble with that elbow, which the Rams are kind of downplaying. But it sounds like the injury that would happen for baseball players in order for them to have a Tommy John surgery. So, we might see, we're definitely going to see a decrease in the Rams passing production as is to happen when one person has the best wide receiver season in history. Obviously, that's got to decrease or regress towards the mean, right? So, in all, it's a regressing offense and a defense missing pieces, and they have a really tough schedule. I can see them missing the playoffs. And then the Bengals on the other side, making the playoffs was like their ceiling last year, right? And now it's like this year, they're automatically going to make it because they added some new pieces. I'm still suspect. I know, we said in our predictions, we both had good things to say, or we all had good things to say about the Rams and the Bengals, but just looking at them, it's like the big thing is that defense. How good are they going to be able to play? Looking back at it, I'm just not sold on that pass rush anymore and that front seven. Trey Hendricks had a good season last year. I can't see that translating over to next year. So I think just a below average, I'll take that back. An average defense with a really good offense just won't be enough to catapult them in a really, really tough AFC. So that's why I think both teams in the Super Bowl last year will miss playoffs.
I definitely think that your Rams thing is more plausible than your Bengals. You brought up good points.
Oh, really?
Rams. Definitely questionable. Definitely
really?
Big.
Sam, because you have them going 13-4 actually. So.
Well, I mean, yes, but that's why it's a hot take from you. And if you let me finish, I was just going to say that I think it is odd. I think it's not super likely that both teams will miss the playoffs entirely. I think they both still have enough talent to definitely get them wild card spots. But Rams is definitely more likely than the Bengals. I just think that, like you said, that the biggest thing was key pieces, and Bengals didn't really lose anybody. But
the thing is,
only
last year we saw the Chargers have we were blinded by their superstars that they had, and kind of didn't look at the holes that they had, and we're like, oh my God, Chargers are going to be, they might win the AFC West, and they go and they miss the playoffs. The same thing might happen to this Bengals team. Oh my God, they got the star power on offense. Where is it on defense? So I think that's why, yeah, I think we're just kind of overlooking them like we did the Chargers last year.
Okay.
Those are some valid points for sure.
Yep. Deck, what's your spicy boy?
Finisher off.
Yeah, sure. I'll finish her off. I'll give a good finisher here, hopefully. So with my third and last hot take, I have kind of on the same boat as Tyler. I have a team missing the playoffs, but I actually made this one a parlay.
Ooh.
I have the Bucks missing the playoffs. I have Tom Brady leaving after the year, and then the Bucks proceeding to go into rebuild mode. So, as your points with the Rams and Bengals possibly missing the playoffs, I think just as equally the Bucks could miss the playoffs. To start off from last year, at the end of last year, obviously over the offseason, the first big news that went on, and most of the news this offseason for the Bucks has been negative news. And then obviously a lot of listeners might say, well, you know what, they have Tom Brady. How could they possibly miss the playoffs? Brady never missed the playoffs. Well, I'll give you an example here. The first negative news that happened was Bruce Arians resigning. BA, Super Bowl winning head coach, great coach in that organization. He leaves, gets replaced by Todd Bowles. Stay in-house? Yeah, that's a good move to stay in-house for sure. But then that proceeds to get, happens where Brady retires, then unretires. So now Brady's back. But you look at the rest of that roster, it's like the negative news just kept on coming for them and not much positivity. Brady's best bud, Gronk, retires. Will it be forever? Who knows? I'm sure Brady could end up talking him out of it sometime down the road if Brady doesn't retire himself. Leonard Fournette then comes into camp. Obviously, the news around Fournette was he came in overweight. He was, 260, 270 around there. So he came out and out of shape.
Cheeseburger Lenny.
Cheeseburger Lenny for sure. And then over the offseason, the Bucks and Shaq Barrett had contract disputes. He ends up getting franchise tagged. Veteran leaders on that defense, and Ndamukong Suh and Jason Pierre-Paul leave. They don't get re-signed. And the biggest X factor in all this is that offensive line. Their current offensive line, which would be projected to go into week 1, would be Donovan Smith at left tackle, who's, sure, he's been a veteran there for many years. Luke Goedeke at left guard. Robert Hainsey at center. 2 unknown names there on the interior. Shaq Mason, one of Brady's old linemen for the New England days at right guard. And then Tristan Wirfs at right tackle, who obviously young, Pro Bowl, great tackle, but dealing with injuries itself. You have Ryan Jensen, who's probably going to be out for the year with a knee injury. Ali Marpet surprisingly retires at left guard over the offseason. Alex Kappa, their right guard, leaves for Cincinnati. Not much just doesn't seem to be going right for this Bucks team at this point. This could definitely be the biggest year where Brady's on his butt more than he is standing up. So I don't think it's out of the realm for the Bucks just this experience or this whole Brady era taking a major downfall this year where they could just miss altogether. And then I could just see Brady being like, you know what? A guy that, obviously there were rumors of Brady wanting to go to Miami over the offseason when he unretired. And I could just see Brady being done with it after this year. And then, the rest of the players around him deciding to go. I mean, Shaq Barrett playing on the franchise tag. He could definitely be gone next year. Akeem Hicks, they brought him from the Bears at nose tackle, or DN, I should say, with Vita Vea at nose tackle. Akeem Hicks on a one-year deal. He'll be gone. Levante David, I could see him being gone, a franchise leader there who could just decide to hang it up. And then, Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, Julio's a one-year experiment. Maybe Mike Evans and Chris Godwin want out if Brady leaves, and Fournette, maybe he would want out. It just seems to me I'm getting the vibes that after everything this offseason and not hearing as much excitement and buzz around the Bucks camp as in years before with Brady, something just seems off about this team. And I just think maybe everything goes wrong, and after this year, we could be seeing them in rebuild mode again.
You know what? I agree with you, but only if they make a deep playoff run. It's like, I feel like a team like that, with all those veterans, they would think to themselves, we didn't even make the playoffs, run it back, do it again. But, if a team, I just can't see a team that doesn't make the playoffs just see that much turnover. I get rebuilding, but it's I think I don't see them missing the playoffs. I think they are going to make a deep playoff run, and therefore that's where I can see a scenario like this happening.
Yeah,
So I think, yeah. Go ahead, Sam.
Sorry. Just to chime in and wrap up a little bit. It's like similar to what you said. Is like, I think that this whole rebuild scenario really only happens if Brady does officially hang up the cleats, because a lot of those players came to Tampa because Brady was playing there, and then if Brady's gone for real, I do think that a lot of them could definitely be seen leaving the fold. But
and I'm not saying like Brady's gonna retire, where he would just like leave the Bucs as far as retirement. I'm just saying if Brady decides to play, I could just see him going to another team.
Okay.
So
yeah, then either way, it's like I think if Brady leaves, I think a lot of those pieces would also choose to head out as well. But
and I want Brady. This is like by far the least excitement going into his tenure there, and as far as talent wise, especially at O-line, and I mean sure the depth there at receiver is great, but tight end, you're gonna roll out Cameron Braid and Kyle Rudolph. Obviously that can't excite Brady too much with Gronk not there. So offensive line then that tight end wise, obviously just can't bring too much excitement to Brady, and I would not be surprised even if the Bucs don't miss the playoffs, but if they get bounced in the playoffs, I could just see Brady too saying at the end of the year, you know what, I won a Super Bowl here first year. We had a good little era here, but I think my time in Tampa has just kind of run its course, and maybe if I decide to keep playing, if he's thinking, maybe let's just go try it on a different team.
Yeah, that's definitely possible. Well, I mean, it is possible, but it's also spicy. And boys, I think we all brought some good spicy takes for this episode, and I hope this might be a hot take, but I hope that you all enjoyed listening. Thank you for all stopping by, and you have a good night, everyone.